or the Law of One series, has access to channeling materials that were brought through with the help of this guy, W.B. Smith, who you'll encounter frequently if you read about ufology. W.B. Smith worked for Canada in the Defense Ministry and was the only officially sanctioned program that investigated this global grid. It was called Project Magnet. The idea that there's this energy grid on the Earth of crisscrossing lines. When you hear Dan Burrish's testimony, he talks about natural stargates. Those are points where these lines cross. They form nodes. A node is basically a dimensional crossing point. Now you have two counter-rotating geometries on the Earth. One that pretty much stays stable and has determined the shape of the continents, and then there's another one that we don't see which counter-rotates. And as the two go through each other, at certain points the nodes will cross. If those node points cross together and you have a favorable planetary alignment at the same time, you get this surge of energy in which space-time and time-space, there's that crossing point briefly. The Bermuda Triangle is a natural stargate. If these two grids cross over each other, the nodes connect, the alignment is right, then you can end up flying through this vortex and fly clear into time-space and end up not in our reality anymore. The reason why all this stuff is important is that 2012 literally represents a vortex activity across the entire Earth. That's what my research has conducted, that I've concluded from the research. Every person on Earth, except for maybe some of the people that are on the negative spiritual path called service to self, but almost everybody on Earth is going to go through this vortex experience, which is an ecstatic thing. It's not a terrifying or painful event at all. It's similar to how the full out happens. Our whole planet goes into that. Now, I read about Ascension and all these things for a long time, and I said, how could this be possible? How could something like this happen? There would have to be a massive surge of energy in the solar system that would be demonstrating this. The work that W.B. Smith was doing in the 50s with people who were contacted by UFOs shows that they had information coming through from channeling, which was very accurate. Smith had a list of 200 questions, specific questions about UFOs, and he only took the people where the channel answered every question the same way. And sometimes the questions were a little bit different, and the channel would say, well, that's because the person is a Christian and they're biasing it with their religious beliefs. Something like that. Anyway, all these channels said the same thing, and one of the things that they kept saying was the whole solar system is going to get charged up with energy. You're going to see all the planets changing, and you're going to see a transformation occur. Earth changes, cataclysmic changes will seem to be happening, but then there's going to be this big energetic event, and the Earth will be propelled into a golden age. There is what's called a three-way split when this happens. Some people stay on the positive path. Those are the people that stay with the Earth. The Earth becomes fourth dimensional activated. When you have an out-of-body experience, which I've done, you fly up into the sky, you go above a certain point, it's kind of like a ceiling. For a long time I couldn't get past the ceiling. It drove me nuts because I wanted to go into space. And I couldn't get past the ceiling. Well, eventually I was able to do that, punch through. You punch through the ceiling and there's a new Earth underneath you. And you fly up again and you punch through another one, there's a new Earth again. And there's buildings and there's cars and there's people, and these are like the afterlife planes where people go after they've physically died. You go high enough, you go up to the seventh one, and it's all like Stonehenge, and there's all these people walking around in robes and headbands, and they're all very friendly to you. And they say hello, and they know that you're there, but they're really kind of surprised to see you. And I've been there a couple times. And then if you go past that, then you go out into space, and typically you end up, finding yourself on a UFO pretty quickly, because they see you and they find you, and you hang out and talk to the ETs, and most of them are very friendly. I've never really had a negative ET experience myself. I know other people have, but so to make a long story short, there's a plane that is concentric with the Earth as a globe, which would be up in the sky, probably even above the altitude you're flying at when you're in an airplane. And that's going to be where people live who are on the positive path as this happens. Now, it does get a little evangelical sounding. The Christian prophecy, Jesus mentioned something that they call the rapture. There are lines in the book of Daniel talking about where there are two, then there shall be one. Two shall be walking in the field, then there shall be one. Two shall be making wine, then there will be one. All this stuff. But you got to remember, Christianity is not the only religion that has this prophecy. It runs through Aboriginal prophecy, Hindu prophecy, Buddhist prophecy, Native American prophecy. Pretty much, you know, the Ragnarok is the Celtic legend. Pretty much any ancient wisdom teaching you find says something discontinuous, spontaneous, and amazing, leading to a golden age, is going to happen on the earth. I don't think that this pole shift thing will happen until after this happens, and most people will have popped through it before the pole shift ever occurs. Now, again, this is really lunatic fringe stuff. However, I did the research. I looked through countless reams of websites and printed them out. I have a huge bookshelf we could film if we have time to show you all the research I did. NASA studies again and again showing every planet in the solar system except for Mercury, but the Sun, Venus, Mars, Earth, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all of them are having massive climate change. They're getting brighter, they're getting hotter, the magnetic field is growing larger. In some cases like Saturn, they're rotating at a different speed.
You did all this research for Richard Hoagland, isn't
That's
that right?
correct, yes.
And actually are working with Hoagland.
That's correct.
On this, and he's published some of your research.
Yeah,
on the site.
I had first found out about this from the work of Dr. Alexei Dmitriev, who's a Russian scientist. He published in 1997, but he didn't have NASA data. He had, you know, Russian data. So I ended up talking to Hoagland about this in 2004, and I'd done a little bit more research, but not too much, and we were talking on the phone, and he said, David, you've got to do it. You've got to get the whole thing from NASA. If this is true, it's the biggest story we've got. So I just hit the books, and I just went nuts on the internet, Googling and research. And what I came out with is a very impressive document, which your contact, Henry Deacon, said was, you know, everything you need to know about what's going on in the solar system. Now,
okay, and that document is called?
It's called Interplanetary Day After Tomorrow. It's a paper that I wrote with Richard Hoagland. You can find it on his website, which is enterprisemission.com. You can also find links to it on my page, and I'm going to be putting up a concise version of all the data in the future that you can read at divinecosmos.com. Why is this important? This gets back into the studies from the Russians about DNA, dealing with a particular experiment that was done. First of all, we have Dr. Glenn Ryan, an American scientist, who showed he took placenta DNA from a human placenta, put it in a test tube, and had people trained to create certain emotional states. They'd hold the test tube, and they'd feel like the greatest anger, rage you can imagine, or they'd feel the love of a mother for a newborn baby, the most pure, unconditional love. And what Dr. Ryan found, R-E-I-N is how you spell his name, is that when you feel the love, the DNA unwinds. And in order for when the helix unwinds, the messenger RNA can go in and grab the code and build life, build healing, build the healing of your body, the healing of cancer, diabetes, whatever. The anger causes the DNA to knot up like a braid of hair, and then you can't get healing at all. Now, this is the kind of data that I went into great detail about in my MP3 series, The Science of Peace, which is available on my site. And that's where I went through all this with this man who won 9 Grammys in music. His name is Larry Sire. We did a whole musical soundtrack for it. It's wonderful. I'm just giving you a little bitty taste of it right now. But anyway, so that proves on a microbiological level that DNA is an antenna for consciousness. It's tuned to the mind and to the soul. Well, now you have to get into this guy, Dr. Peter Garriev, who first conducted research called the DNA phantom effect. He put DNA in a little room in which it can absorb light, and all the light gets stuck in the DNA and spirals through the molecule. It doesn't stay in the room. The DNA is like a light sponge, which is really weird, right? But then you take the DNA out of the tube and the light keeps on spiraling as if the DNA was still there holding it in place, but there's no DNA. And guess how long it stays like that? How long do you think? You watching this, 30 days. 30 days the DNA continues to act even though it's not there anymore. This is what we call a latent structure.